welcome everyone to the next edition of the CSA podcast series called Best Minds in Associations. And boy, do we have one today. We're honored to be joined by Dave Kanagy. Dave, welcome.
Thank you.
I'd like to tell you a little bit about Dave. Dave has, since 2004, has been with the Society for Mining, Metallurgy, and Exploration, commonly known as SME. He's been largely responsible for their success. So we should be excited that we have a guest like that today. Focusing on growth, innovation, and opportunity, SME has become the world's largest mining-related organization. Dave is a recipient of two prestigious awards, the one and only Colorado Society of Association Executives Professional of the Year Award, and the Mining and, stick with me on this, Metallurgical Society of America's Gold Medal Award. Congratulations on those. Dave has his BS degree in industrial education from the University of Maryland and an MS degree in technology education from Eastern Illinois University. He also has his Certified Association Executive, CAE, designation from ASAE. Dave, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
My pleasure, Bob. Happy to be here with you.
So these podcasts, we've gotten some just great input over the last few months. And I think one of the reasons is because we're bringing unique people into the podcast booth. And so what we're going to do with Dave today, Dave, as you can tell, Dave has a vast amount of experience in association management, lots of stories to tell and lots of things to share. And Dave, what we have found that our listeners enjoy is when you can talk about your experiences, strengths, and hope, and the things that have gone well, things that have maybe not gone so well in your career that can help some of our members, whether they're longtime association management people or new in the industry. So I'm really asking you, Dave, to just kind of open up your heart and talk to us today about things that you think would be valuable for our listeners and, quite frankly, for me as well to know. How does that sound?
That sounds like a good plan there, Bob, and I'm happy to share any thoughts that would be useful to other executives.
Awesome.
It's important.
We appreciate that. So I do have a series of questions that I'll hit you with, and certainly feel free to go in the direction that you think is going to be the most beneficial. So, I don't really want to talk about what a difficult year it's been and, last 15 months. It's been difficult, but there's been a lot of silver linings that I think have come out of what we've gone through. But what I'd like to hear from you, kind of the first topic, Dave, would be talk to us about board relationships and relationships with officers and directors, with kind of a focus on the importance of developing trust and maybe even having difficult conversations. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned over your years about those relationships and how they evolve.
Bob, I can only echo probably what every other association executive, CEO has said in recent months, that the past 12, 15 months has probably been the most difficult time of my career. And I'm a lifelong association executive.
Sure.
I was a CEO at age 34 and now I'm over 60. So it's been a long time since I've seen, or I probably haven't seen anything like we've seen in the last year or so. And I think that the ability to work with your board and work with your officers in the organization is really dependent upon the trust that they have in you and the recommendations, because we were going in every month saying, we've got to change this, we've got to do this, we can't do this. And, getting them to agree to those kinds of things and to basically have trust in you, your staff, to implement, engage, move the organization forward in a very difficult time, speaks volumes for the ability for them to sign on to it, because, in some cases we're making recommendations and we're really not sure how it's going to work out, but we just think this is the right thing to do.
Yep.
Last year, 2020 for SME was, I wouldn't say it was normal. Of course it wasn't, but it turned out okay for us.
Sure, sure.
We were fortunate enough to have our annual conference before COVID hit in early March. And so we got our biggest revenue source behind us and whatnot. But then, everything after that fell apart.
Yeah.
So, we had to put more effort into a lot of things where, we created a SME cares program, for instance, where, all right, we've got members that are being laid off because of the virus and whatnot. So what can we do to bring them along? All right, we'll waive your membership dues for a year until
Mhm.
you either find another job or get called back to work, whatever the situation might be. And we go in and we tell the board we need to do this and this is why. And 500-600 members took advantage of that type of opportunity that we provided last year. But it worked out well. You're buying loyalty, and you're demonstrating to your members the value that you have in them. And I think the board understands when we were recommending some of these types of programs that we were looking out for the best interests of the overall organization.
Sure. And so, on back to the trust piece, and if you feel compelled to share maybe we won't mention names, but if you have a story you want to share, because the trust piece, it's two ways, right? I mean, you got to have at least two parties to either develop trust or to lose trust. And one of the things that my father told me early on was, trust is a pretty easy thing to gain, but once you lose it, it's almost impossible to gain back. So, what have been some of the things that you have been mindful of, or that you've taught your team of, in keeping a strong relationship with leadership that can be based on trust? Anything come to mind?
Well, I'll say first of all, trust is a two-way program. You're right. You have to have trust in the board. The board has to have trust in you and your staff. One of the things I tell the staff all the time is that we're getting a new president every year. That president's coming with a different personality, with a different communication style, with different priorities, and we're going to have to adapt to that person. They're not going to change their personality or their style for us. We're going to have to modify our working arrangement to meet that person's needs, et cetera. So, when you do that, I think it starts to show that you can build some trust. But I'll tell you a real story is, don't ever get too connected to a person that comes along in your leadership, because I've been fortunate that I really haven't. I try to keep my personal life separated from my professional life to some great extent. But I can tell you the second or the third SME president I had here, it was the first female president at SME. So we worked together for our regular year, for her year as president-elect and for her year as past president. But she said to an incoming president once, she goes, "Hey, when you become the past president, Kanagy won't even know who you are any longer, because the emails stop coming from him." And I turned to her and I said, "Hey, Barb, you've done all you can do for the society. I've worked with you. We've nurtured your program forward and whatnot. But I got to move on to the next person, Barb. It's
That's
just the way the system works."
Yeah, that's a good story, and it really, I think we both have had those experiences. You'll have some that'll be like, "I don't care if I ever hear from you again," and then others that'll say, "Hey, where did you go?
Yeah.
I miss the constant emails."
Yeah.
Talk to me, Dave, about selecting volunteers. I know that some of the things that we had shared earlier. We have a president-elect with the organization I'm with, the Water Design Build Council. I haven't even met the president-elect in person yet. I've only been with the organization for coming on 15 months, but we're preparing things, and I'm realizing I've never literally shook their hand and had a beer with them and sat with them, and it's unique. That's obviously coming back. But talk to us a little bit about selecting the right volunteers, and what your experience has taught that you want to look for, in particular in these challenging times. Maybe a little bit on that.
So I hope that most organizations have some sort of nominating process, some sort of nominating committee. As someone says, we don't have an election. Yeah, we do. The election is just 9 people sitting at a table, though.
Right.
It's not 10, 12, 15,000 members perhaps, but you have an election process, trust me.
Sure.
So, one of the things that I'm a part of the nominating committee at SME, but I don't vote officially. But the executive director has a lot of say in the whole
Sure.
in the situation because frankly, I'm at the other end of the spectrum from you. I've been here 17 years, going on 18, and when the list of candidates for various positions and leadership roles in the organization come in, I know everybody on the list practically, and I'm the only one in the room that probably knows everybody. That's a good thing and it's a bad thing. So, what I try to do is I try to sit down with the nominating committee and remind them what our goals are for the upcoming couple of years. What are our things we're working on that we're doing well? Where are our weaknesses? What type of skills or talent would be helpful for the board or for the officer rotation? And try to guide them into hopefully selecting the very best person that's available for any position that we're looking for. I can tell you this is another story, but more than a few years ago, again, 5, 7, 8 years ago, my executive assistant, she will go to the nominating committee just to take notes and minutes because we'll have a record of our actions and whatnot. But she turns to me after the meeting was over. She goes, Dave, you do realize that you have enough power in the organization to determine who's going to be president of the society, don't you? And I go, yeah. And I said, but let's hope I never have to use it.
Well, but you're right. I learned early in my career that I spent a lot of time looking for good people, right? Whether it's to chair a committee or serve on a committee or ultimately become the chair of the organization. And it is a little self-serving, right? Because we want to work with good people, and
Absolutely.
and so often you can spot a bad one a mile away, right?
Yeah,
And
well,
and yeah,
sometimes we haven't spotted a bad one a mile away because we've gotten a few people onto the board once in a while. And, I've had a few officers or other directors come to me and say, Dave, we're never letting this guy be president of the society, are we? I said, well, first of all, it's not my decision, but I don't disagree with what you're saying,
sure. Yeah,
So,
that's a great point. How about the process of bringing on good team members, good staff members? Share with our audience today some of the things that you have found have worked or maybe haven't worked to help you. I know you got a great team now, so compliments on that. But what's some ideas and some concepts that our listening audience could benefit from?
So I don't know that there's any silver bullet that gets you the perfect staff person, Bob. I've been hiring people for 40 years and, sometimes, I say that, this person's best day was their interview. And sometimes I say, this person's fantastic and they've turned out to be an excellent employee. So, I have the ability to pick a few less desirable employees from
Sure.
time to time as well as anybody does. But you try to go through a thorough review process. What I think is more important, even after the interview, and is the onboarding process for staff. We have a pretty good onboarding process so that we can bring new staff members up to date on what's going on in the organization. We have them spend a little time with all the managers, understanding what each department does and what their contribution is to society, to the society, and what elements they bring. We also have a set of core values, staff values, that frankly we developed probably my first or second year here. And, we let the staff, what are the most important values to us as an organization? Service to customer, financial value, a value on ethics and team relationships and things like that. Those are all important. And I personally try to meet with every single person. And that's one of the areas where I always say, let me go over the SME staff values with you. And we really want to measure people to live to these values. And are we always successful? Not always, but we always have a value moment at a staff meeting and highlight one of those values and remind them. And we try to ask a staff member to demonstrate this in something they might have done recently and things like that. So constantly reminding them of those things, I think, are really important. And I think if leadership in the organization can live to the values, they will demonstrate those well to other staff, and the expectation is there that those things will happen. In an overall looking at talent, and knowledge and skills that people bring to you. It's amazing, the experiences people have had, and the things that they can bring to your organization, and how we can take those experiences and make our organization better. I agree with you. I want to try to hire people that are smarter than me.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. How important is it for an association executive and their team to understand the culture of their members' industry, their members' profession that you represent? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, we represent the mining industry. Most of our members work outdoors and sometimes harsh environments.
Sure.
Whether it's 110 degrees or whether it's minus something degrees, they're working in those environments every day. They're not sitting in an office in front of a screen. I chuckle a couple of times when I hear staff, I can't get so-and-so to respond to me today. Well, maybe that's because he's out in the mine, and he's not sitting in front of his screen ready to answer your question or whatever.
Right.
Let's remember that. One of the things I do is I do take our staff members to mine sites on occasion, so that they get the idea of, this is
Brilliant.
the environment that our members work in.
Yeah.
They put safety equipment on and they walk out into the mine, and this is the experience that they're having. And it's important, I think, for staff to understand the environment our members are working in. And then it's also important for our staff to understand the culture. We've done some surveys before, Bob. You know what our members are into: hunting, fishing, camping, and things like that. If we were looking for new members, we ought to run an ad in some hunting, fishing, or camping magazine and whatnot, because we'll
Sure.
find miners that are out doing those kinds of things. They enjoy the outdoor activities and things like that. So
Sure.
important for you to understand that demographic, with members. And I think that, you understanding that helps you guide what I think the most important values of the organization should be, that will resonate with members and whatnot.
Well, and I would think kind of go back to what you said. If you're bringing some of your team members to one of your members' minds and allowing them to actually see what they do, your members have to appreciate that.
Oh, our members roll out the red carpet every time we show up. They're feeding our staff. They're taking them in the mine sites. They're making sure that they're safe. They're making sure that they understand what's going on. They point out areas that are important. They allow our staff to ask questions. What's happening here. And then if you've ever been to a surface mine before, they'll do an explosion for you if you get the timing is right.
Really?
And it's very, very cool. When you see the earth just kind of looks like it's more like a earthquake, but
Sure.
it's really interesting when they've got it all set up and they let the dynamite go and break up the ground so that they can get the next level of mining done and whatnot. So
I can tell you, I have never had that experience with any member organization that I've been with. So that's pretty cool. Dave, we chatted before we started the podcast a little bit, and you kind of made a comment about happy to go elsewhere, and that's such a hot issue right now with offices reopening. I believe that you're in your office now, unless you have award plaques in your bedroom, which I kind of doubt. But it is an issue. And I was talking with a group of colleagues recently, and that almost now becomes a new kind of interview question, right? I mean, people asking about inclusion, diversity, and social equity is a big issue now, but also, employees saying, where do I have to work? What are the requirements? What are my obligations to kind of have flex time? All of that. The pandemic's opened up a whole new world on that. So, what are your thoughts on that? What can you share with us in that arena?
I think it's changing, Bob. I also think it's changing quickly. Um, 40 years ago, the office workday was 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and lunch is 12 to 1. And
Sure.
no one questioned it. I put a suit and tie on, I went to work. I didn't think anything different. I just thought that was what you do.
Sure.
But now, the office workplace has evolved dramatically different. We've got it, in my opinion, we've got it all. We've got flex hours, we've got remote work, we've got, all kinds of other benefits to help employees with maybe family issues or child issues, whatever the case might be. And we've kind of tried to adapt our work philosophy so that we're measuring results, not necessarily face time or seat time or things like that in the
Sure.
organization. And it's, being a baby boomer, man, it is easy to measure things in seat time or face time and things
Yes,
like
it
that.
is.
It's
Yep.
it's hard for me to adopt some of the philosophies that we're at now. But I mean, coming out of the pandemic now, we're now talking about what's the restart in our office look like? When does it happen? What are we going to do with the vaccine?
Sure.
I will say that, SME is going to have a policy in place that if you travel for the society, you have to have been vaccinated. It's just the safest thing we can do for you. It's the safest thing we can do for our members.
Okay.
And we've evaluated it, and that's the direction we're headed. I'm not sure
Okay.
it's right. I'm just saying that's the direction that we're going, and
Sure.
that kind of a thing.
And no,
But
go ahead. Go ahead,
yeah,
Dave.
but at the end of the day, we're going to have more remote work people. We're going to have more remote work opportunities for staff. Obviously there are some positions in our organization you just got to be here. You can't open the mail without being here in the office, kind of a
Sure.
deal.
Yeah.
But we're going to probably have more opportunity, and it's going to work. It's going to look a little different. Technologies like Zoom and Microsoft Teams have given us the opportunity to expand some of the things that we do. And that leads into committee meetings and other governance type groups to put programming together, our publishing group or our books group, et cetera. They'll all work differently, I think, after the pandemic is open, even when we have some sort of return to office in place.
Makes sense. Okay, Dave, last question. And this is well, I shouldn't say it's necessarily personal, but it's going to be about you. Tell us what's the number one thing you've learned over your career, your long, very successful career, um, that's helped you kind of adapt to change, and whether it's with members or with staff, just kind of a closing Dave thought.
Bob, that's a good question. But if anything that I've probably learned myself over the years of I've worked is, be honest, be straightforward, and be as accurate as you can with the words you choose to talk to your board and your officers and your leadership with. I think that gains a tremendous amount of trust. Um, I've had situations where, sometimes the finances are fabulous and sometimes the finances aren't so good, but the one thing is that no one ever feels as if I'm trying to paint a better or rosier picture than reality really is. And I'll tell you one other thing I've learned is that when you don't have any money in your organization, it's way easier to manage.
A little more
You,
painful, but
you
way
could just say
easier.
no to everything. You could just say no to everything,
Uh,
and nobody questions it. But when you have a lot of money, when people start coming up with ideas, now you have to go to the well, does that really fit our mission, or is that within our purpose, or does that fit our strategic plan?
Sure.
'Cause now if you really don't want to be doing something and you probably don't think it's the right thing for the organization, you got to come up with a better answer than
Uh,
no, we don't got any
I,
money.
I got a funny feeling a lot of us have been through that.
Uh,
So I want to let our audience know that Dave is going to be speaking a couple times, I think, up at the CSA Summer Conference at the Vail Grand Hyatt. Those dates for our summer conference are June 30th through July 1st. So we appreciate you coming up to do that, Dave. And so if you want to hear more from Dave in person, go to the CSAE website, csae.org. It's a pretty simple process, and register for the conference. It's going to be a dynamite conference, an in-person conference, and we're all looking forward to that. Well, Dave, thank you for today. Thank you for spending the time with me and our listening audience. We greatly appreciate it. I will look forward to seeing you in person in Vail. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed our podcast today. And we look forward to connecting with you again in the future.
Thank you, Bob. And I look forward to seeing everybody in Vail.
Great. Thank you.